or buy it because it's a good investment. No, that's again, you're trading guilt. Why don't we just buy it because we want it and not have to always, oh, it's a good investment for the future and it'll be good for the kids' inheritance. Like, fuck all of that. Like, let's enjoy it today because that's the point of going to work. I'm going to ask you this. A little dicky bird told me that you just bought a beach house.
Not just bought a beach house, but 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that you said that you thought that only rich people ever bought beach houses.
That's what I was told by my parents.
So does that mean you're a rich bitch now? Can we call you
I think a lot of people think so.
I fucking love it. And I absolutely love it. Next time you come to one of my events, Lester, note to self, can we get a ribbon for Amy underneath her badge, please? Rich bitch, aka rich bitch. We need a mention of this at every event moving forward. That's your. Are you coming to New Jersey? Are you in New Jersey?
Yeah. Oh yeah, of course.
Okay, I'll have something for you.
Okay.
Lester, ask me after this podcast over. I'm gonna have to have something for Amy. But again, isn't it funny? Right, and this might be a good conversation. Isn't it funny that we're allowed to believe from an early age that only rich people have beach houses? You hear that at 7-year-old or 8-year-old or 9-year-old. It's like you've excluded yourself almost from ever getting one because you just think, I can't do that. I'm not from a rich family. My parents have said that only the rich get those. Oh wow. Like, unfortunately, that's how millions and millions and millions of people are raised around the world. Was that kind of how it was with you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I was born and raised in Northern California, so went out to Santa Cruz, Monterey, Carmel, all these really nice beach areas, and we drive along the beach and see the houses. And it was very much. I come from basically a blue collar family, and it was just the rich was bad. It was they didn't earn it. And it was just like, oh, okay, well, like you wouldn't want that because that would mean you're kind of a bad person. And so drove out to this town called Seabrook in Washington. And as soon as we drove up, I told my husband, I was like, we need to buy a house here because it's a good investment. One, I want one. Two, it's a good investment. And so 2 years later,
one being the most important, by the way.
Yes.
That you want it. Again, the mindset of the world that we've all been to, buy it because it's a good investment. No, that's again, you're trading guilt. Why don't we just buy it because you want the fucking thing and you want to enjoy your kids there and you want to have fun there and you want to watch movies there and you want to wake up and go for a walk there? Why don't we just buy it because we want it and not have to always, it's a good investment for the future and it'll be good for the kids' inheritance? Like, fuck all of that. Like, let's enjoy it today because that's the point of going to work.
Exactly. So 3 years later, after I said that, I walked into my brand new house that was fully furnished, and I would say for anybody who has something like that it would be so meaningful. It destroyed me. It in all the best ways. Like, I walked in and everything I thought about myself, everything that I thought I was capable of or would have in life, like, it was gone. I was just like, this is the game on, let's go. And that was actually in October of 2019. So it was a great moment to have right before March 2020, because now I've just bought this beach house and COVID kicks off. And I'm like, all right, well, let's figure this out. So it definitely, if there's anything like that for you, I would definitely encourage you, do it when it's, I understand financially responsible and everything, but do it, because talk about the mindset shift. Just at that point, it literally destroyed everything I had heard.
What do you mean by that? All of the sort of false beliefs that you
false beliefs.
It just smashed all of those. Yeah.
It just smashed. Yeah. Because I didn't care anymore. I didn't care that that's what my parents thought. I didn't care that that's what people were going to say. All that mindset, it was gone from me, and it also the guilt and shame that went along with it.
So how did you get to that point then?
Walking into my beach house.
Just getting inside of it. That was it.
Yeah. It's obviously the process of going through that, right? It was a process of being like, oh my gosh, we're going to buy a house. and getting the money together. So there was a lot of steps because we bought a new house. So it was a year that it took to build it. So there was a lot that happened during that time, applying for the loan, all the different steps that you go through. But all of those culminated in that moment of buying it. And I remember I was kind of lightheaded, not because I was concerned, but I was lightheaded when I walked in because it just exploded all those false beliefs and made me really say, so wait, if I believe that and that's not true, what else is not true? And so what else am I willing to reconsider? And so, I mean, that's really been it for the past 5 years of just like, really looking at those false beliefs, looking at, and, you know, you've brought up a lot of stuff during different conferences and podcasts and stuff that I've been like, oh, wait, hold on. I need to think about that. But instead of coming from kind of a closed mindset, because I have already established that false belief and that's what I hold on to, it has opened my mind of being like, how do I use that in my life?
Yeah.
So I remember at a conference you talked about, it was in Vegas, not this past year, but the year before, you talked about your home. Yeah. And where do you go back to? And I was thinking about it on the flight home, and I got home and I told my husband, I'm like, so my home is responsibility.
Yeah.
I take care of things. I want to move.
I was just going to say, let's get the for sale sign up. That sounds like a boring place to live, Amy.
It really is. It really is. But again, it's that mindset shift. And instead of being like, well, that's fine for Paul, or Paul gets to have fun or whatever, I was just like, wait a second, hold on. What does that mean for me? How do I integrate that? Wait, I don't like where I am. And it's a process, right? It's a process of having to go through that. But I do think walking into my beach house really opened up my mind to your life can be different.
Yeah, it's amazing. I wrote about this in the Extraordinary Achievement book, and I don't know if people thought the story was true, but it was 100% true. Early on, I said, I think chapter 2 is about money and false beliefs around money. If you haven't read it, if you're listening, if you haven't read it, Extraordinary Achievement, you can get it on Amazon, and it's a book entirely about what we're talking about here, really, which is the false beliefs around what it takes to be successful. And I remember, true story, a friend of my son's came into the house at 9-year-old and said, Harry, you guys are the nicest rich people I've ever met. All the other rich people are nasty, right? And I was like, I didn't hear it. Natalie told me on the night. She came and she said, did you hear what, I won't say his name, did you hear what this boy said today? And I said, no, tell me. And she said, Harry said he said this. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I have a few thoughts. Number one, how many rich people has he met? And number two, the most important question, at what level does his mother define rich? Like, who is she to define that you're rich if you have this much money or that much money? And when you start to unpick the stupidity of people, and I mean that respectfully, you start to unpick the stupidity of these beliefs and these throwaway comments. Who is she to decide at what level you're determined rich? And that led to chapter 3 in my book, which was ultimately the difference between somebody at $1 million versus somebody at $500,000 or $2 million versus $1 million isn't necessarily greed, like the government or the press or politicians want you to believe. I believe it's curiosity, in that I want to see what it's like to live in a beach house. I'm curious enough to go, I wonder what it would be like to wake up once a month in a beach house or a house in the woods, in the lakes, in the mountains, whatever it would be. I'm curious enough to wonder what that might be like. And then I'm going to backtrack and work out what I need to do to go and let that curiosity become a reality. And for most people, for most quote unquote rich people who are usually, it's just rich is just somebody a level above they are. And that's all you ever find. It's, oh, they're rich. It's got a bit more money than us. Oh, they're rich. And it is you're evil, you're nasty. And what I'd said in the book was that ultimately parents do that to protect their kids because and this was the sad part about it. Parents protect their kids from the disappointment of never being rich very early. The parent has already decided that 9-year-old will never be rich. So let's protect them now from any disappointment. But what are the parents really doing? Absolving themselves. They feel bad at the idea that their kid will never be rich. So if I can stay in the rich, I'll never have to face my kid who'll never be able to say to me or never will say to me, Mom or Dad, it's your fault that we're not rich. they stain the rich quite early, so that there is a lack of, or an avoiding of disappointment later in life when there's an inevitability to not being rich. The parent doesn't want that responsibility, so they just take it off the table by saying, hey, the rich are all nasty. You don't want to be like them anyway, son. Come and suffer over here with us. We'll live in misery, but at least we'll be, at least we won't be rich. And sadly, that cycle continues, election cycle after election cycle, year after year, month after month, that there isn't a chance of any of this changing, because the mindset and the beliefs, which ultimately configure people's actions and get people to take action, that'll never change. So what you've said there is incredible. And the home thing, just to bring people into that, it was after Xander was born, wasn't it? And I had a few rough months, obviously, after he was in intensive care and all sorts of shit was going on. And it was like, okay, like I can stay and be worried, or I can stay and be sad, or I can be miserable, I can be all of these things, or I can just go back home, right? And home was, for me, home is playful. Home is fun. And that's where I like to live. I've got a room of responsibility in that home of playfulness, right? There's a room there, out the back, as far away as possible, right? But it's there. But ultimately, the home that I choose to live in is not in Orlando. It's not in England, where I am now. It's not in anywhere I might buy further down the line. Portugal, wherever. I love Portugal. It's a playful home, and it's a fun home. And that's what my default is. I go back to playfulness. And whenever things start to kind of get a bit, I don't like this, just go back home, Paul. Just go back to laugh. Go back, put stupid movies on with your kids. Go back home and watch kids' TV. Go back home and play on the floor. Go back home and fight with your kids in a playful kind of way. And I think if everybody understands that, it's much easier. But you said something, and I wrote it down. You said a wonderful thing that tells you how far you've come, and I'm giving you this as such a accolade for you. I could stand on stage in front of 1,000 people, and I could tell the same thing to everybody in the room about I go to a playful home, or I live like this. 9 out of 10 will go back on the flight and go, that's okay for Paul. That's all right for him. He's this, he's the other. He's got this business. He's got this, he's got the other. They'll make assumptions, wild assumptions about what I've got and what I've got access to. 1 out of 10 will take ownership of it and go, actually, where I choose to go back to tonight is a choice. And although I've lived in a home that's full of responsibility, and that's been my identity, I've changed my mind, and I want to live in a home that's playful, that's fun, that's light and bright and airy, right? And all of a sudden, these images go in your head, and you think, I could live there, and I'd like to live there. Okay, why don't you live there? Now, it might not be the exact physical circumstance that you want at this point, but once we change the view of it, and we change the way we think about ourselves, and the what we're capable of, and how we want to live, all of a sudden, actions start to kind of follow suit. And I think that's such a big thing for people to grasp, that ultimately every single one of us has a choice in how we want to feel, where we want to live, how we want to play. And my experience has been that you get that playfulness, you get that looseness, you get a little bit more freedom, you break a few rules, you live life how you kind of always wanted to, you get a flair, you get more energy, and boom. And that's in the end what people want, always have, always will.